thank you for joining us. And when there's 16 games, they all have playoff implications, but in Week 12, there's less math for us to do, which is always good. And speaking of math, we have some educational tie-ins with regards to the Houston Texans. J.J. Watt, much like famed recording artist, lyricist, and poet Mike Jones, put out his phone number. He said, text me. So one young man did just that. And he was like, hey, if you text me back, we get 100 on our final. And JJ says, hey, you better get 100 on that final. Look at him. He's a good teammate. Even though he is out for the season with that torn pec, teammate to students out there, sure he is rooting on his Houston Texans. Tomorrow, one guy who will not be playing in the remainder of the season, as of right now, Myles Garrett, attending his appeal hearing today in New York at the league office. Myles Garrett, of course, suspended for the remainder of the season on the heels of an altercation with Mason Rudolph and several Pittsburgh Steelers that occurred last Thursday. Let's bring in NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport to discuss what is new right now regarding Myles Garrett and his suspension. How did the meeting go today, Ian?
It sounded essentially like Myles Garrett laid out his appeal to the league, and obviously we know by now he is suspended through the balance of the season, through the through the playoffs, and potentially beyond, because he has to meet with Roger Goodell just to get clearance to be able to rejoin his team and get back on the field. That was one of the things that he took exception with, claiming that in the CBA for on-field acts that there really is nothing in there for indefinite suspensions, basically that the CBA does not allow for indefinite suspension. So he will be asking not just for a reduction, but also for a finite number. The other thing I'm told he is going to be pushing is simply the precedent. And remember the situation surrounding Antonio Smith, the Texans defensive lineman, took a helmet off an opponent, swung it at him, got 2 preseason games as far as a suspension, then just 1 regular season game. That will be one of the things Myles Garrett will be leaning on to try to get his indefinite suspension reduced. And he was in person, obviously, as we saw today, to make that case.
Looking over at some of the other suspensions stemming from this incident, Ian, what can you tell us about those?
Well, we are still waiting for word on Larry Ogunjobi, the Browns defensive lineman who pushed Mason Rudolph and ended up getting a 1-game suspension. We are also waiting on Marquise Pouncey, who got a 3-game suspension for trying to kick an opponent as well. Obviously, in this case, Myles Garrett. No word yet. The original thought was that we were going to hear on at least Ogunjobi today, because this is the start of the work week. This is when players need to know, when teams need to know who they have available. But as of this very second, the appeals officer has not yet informed the world, whether or not Ogunjobi is going to have a suspension reduced. As far as Pouncey, the thought is he's probably out this week anyway, so maybe there isn't nearly as much of a time issue. But both of these hearings, or both these results from the hearings which happened yesterday and Monday, should be coming soon.
Yeah, there was so much to extract from that altercation on the field last Thursday night. Perhaps afterwards, more scrutiny was paid to the events that led up to it on the ground between Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett. Mason Rudolph had something to say about that today, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He gave a prepared statement to reporters, with the thought being that it was much better to hear from him, to see him say those words, even though it was a prepared statement, than have it be something on a piece of paper. And among the things that Mason Rudolph said, first of all, he said he didn't say anything to Myles Garrett, which the NFL will obviously look at the audio and see whether or not that was the case. And, of course, Mike Tomlin has said he takes ownership of the Steelers' role in this thing. But as far as Mason Rudolph, he also said that he did not feel like his action lived up to those that a football player should have, basically saying that he felt short of the standards. He is expected to be fined. We don't know the fine, but it should be a rather hefty one for his role in the fight.
Yeah, definitely fair to say non-standard by all parties involved on Thursday night. Ian, let's look over to the team now, because they got a couple of key injuries, especially with their starting running back.
Yeah, they certainly do. James Conner has a shoulder injury, which has really been the case for the last couple weeks. We thought he was going to play, or he did play on Thursday night, really came out kind of holding his shoulder, and it was clear that AC joint sprain, which robbed him of 2 games prior, was just not ready to go. It's not like it's worsened, though. It's really the same place as it has been, so his status is still up in the air, but it's not like, usually when a player goes back in, gets hurt, Usually it's a couple games. We simply don't know the status of James Conner. Similar mystery surrounds Juju Smith-Schuster. He's in the concussion protocol, but he also has a knee injury, and he's wearing a bulky brace around the locker room, spotted by local reporters. His status is also up in the air. So as the Steelers move forward, we do not know right now whether or not they're going to have two of their best players.
Yeah. Quite the consequential game for both the Steelers and the Browns late in this 2019 season. Ian Rappaport with the latest there. We'll be back with Ian as we continue here on NFL Now. They're continuing in the playoff hunt in the NFC. Those